Word on the street is that a wave of rappers were reportedly arrested just after fresh leaked footage tied to 50 Cent's documentary started spreading online, and the reaction across hip-hop has been explosive. The footage allegedly exposes moments that could seriously damage careers, and 50 Cent has not been subtle about it. In fact, he's been openly clowning people online and reposting clips connected to the chaos. Today, we're breaking down the leaked footage, the backlash, and why everybody in the industry seems to be talking about 50 Cent right now. To really understand how all of this escalated, you have to go back to December of 2025. That's when the four-part Netflix documentary series Sean Combs, The Reckoning officially hit the platform. 50 Cent, whose real name is Curtis James Jackson III, teamed up with director Alexandria Stapleton to create a project that promised viewers a much darker and more revealing look at Diddy's life, career, and controversies. The series dropped all at once on Netflix. Almost 2 years after 50 first revealed he was working on a documentary project back on December 7, 2023. And this was not some small, independent internet rollout. This was a major Netflix-backed production. The streaming giant described the series as an investigative and revealing documentary event that explored the allegations surrounding Sean Diddy Combs and the empire he built over the course of decades. The project covered a lot of ground. The first 2 episodes revisited the East Coast-West Coast rap feud of the 1990s, including the still unsolved murders of Tupac Shakur and Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B.I.G. The broader series also looked at major turning points in Diddy's rise, including his clashes with Death Row Records, his relationships with celebrities, including Cassie Ventura, and other chapters of his public and private life. But the material that made the biggest impact was the footage nobody expected the documentary to include. According to reports surrounding the release, The Reckoning featured previously unseen video said to have been filmed in the 6 days leading up to Diddy's arrest, along with handwritten journal entries from Bad Boy co-founder Kirk Burroughs that allegedly documented years of managing Diddy's business and personal affairs. And the story behind that footage only made the situation even messier. The footage reportedly came from a videographer Diddy had hired to document his life and his legal troubles for what was supposedly intended to be a personal documentary. But after his arrest, a third-party freelancer allegedly leaked parts of that material while lead documentarian Michael Oberle was out of town. Oberle later told Rolling Stone that the leak was not about money or some disagreement over payment. He described it as a betrayal, claiming that someone passed the footage along to 50 Cent in a way he considered unethical. And the content itself immediately got people talking. One of the most discussed clips allegedly shows an agitated Diddy speaking intensely with his lawyer, frustrated over the legal pressure around him, and pushing his team to find somebody willing to fight back aggressively against the claims being made. When 50 Cent was later asked directly how this footage ended up in the documentary, he did not offer a clear explanation. In interviews leading up to the release, both he and director Alexandria Stapleton kept their answers extremely careful. When The Hollywood Reporter pressed them on the source, 50 reportedly responded by asking why anyone would expect them to reveal their sources. Stapleton gave a similarly firm statement, saying that the footage came to them legally and that they had secured the rights needed to use it. And according to Stapleton, one thing about Sean Combs is that he has spent decades filming himself. She suggested that this kind of self-documentation had been a long-running habit, if not an obsessio. The documentary also included a number of personal and awkward moments that painted Diddy in a harsh light. One clip that got a lot of attention, and that 50 Cent himself highlighted, showed Diddy greeting fans in Harlem, taking pictures, smiling for the cameras, and then getting back into his luxury vehicle and making comments that many viewers took as revealing. In the clip, he allegedly asked for hand sanitizer and said he felt like he needed to wash because he felt dirty after the encounter. 50 Cent later pointed to that moment as evidence of what he says is Diddy's true character. 50 also explained publicly why he felt the documentary needed to exist in the first place. In an interview with ABC News and Robin Roberts, he said that staying silent would send the wrong message. In his view, if no one said anything, the culture could be interpreted as being fine with the behavior tied to the allegations. He framed the project as something bigger than personal beef, saying he felt a responsibility to speak for people who could not speak for themselves and arguing that too few major figures in hip-hop were willing to be vocal. He went even further, saying that if he stayed quiet, the entire culture risked being misrepresented. And whether people agreed with him or not, the audience response was massive. Reports around the release claimed that the documentary pulled in over 50 million views, showing just how much public attention the subject had generated. Even 50 Cent himself admitted he knew the project would be big, but he did not expect it to perform at the level it reportedly did. He even compared that success to major Netflix franchises and suggested the scale caught him off guard. So the documentary landed. It became a major event, and it changed 50 Cent's position in the culture. He was no longer just the guy trolling on Instagram. Now he was the guy who could help put your life on screen, frame the narrative, and have millions of people watching. Diddy's camp responded immediately, and they did not hold back. His team publicly blasted the Netflix series, especially because it included footage allegedly shot in the days before his September 2024 arrest. They described the project as unfair, illegal, and deeply personal. Diddy spokesperson Judah Engelmayer laid out the argument clearly in a statement, claiming that Netflix had relied on stolen footage that was never meant for public release. According to that statement, Diddy had been collecting footage of his own life since he was a teenager in order to eventually tell his story in his own way. From that perspective, his team argued it was fundamentally unfair and illegal for Netflix to use that material in a project he did not authorize. But Diddy's side did not stop there. They also took direct aim at 50 Cent, calling it outrageous that Netflix would hand major influence over a documentary about Sean Combs to somebody they described as a longtime enemy with a personal vendetta. The statement suggested that beyond the legal questions, the decision represented a serious betrayal on a personal level. Diddy's legal team also reportedly sent Netflix a cease and desist letter shortly before the documentary was released, arguing that the pre-indictment footage had been used without authorization. Netflix rejected those claims. The company responded by saying that the allegations from Diddy's team were false, that the project had no connection to earlier discussions between Sean Combs and Netflix, and that the footage leading up to his indictment and arrest had been legally obtained. Netflix also pushed back against the idea that this was some revenge project. The company stated that 50 Cent was an executive producer, but not the person with creative control, and also noted that nobody featured had been paid to participate. That last detail was important because it directly challenged the idea that the series was just a personal hit job designed by 50 himself. And then the story took an even stranger turn. In one of the weirdest twists to come out of the documentary fallout, 50 Cent posted on social media that he had received what he described as an early Christmas gift from Diddy after the project's release. He shared a photo of a bouquet of flowers that he claimed had been sent to him while he was performing at a club in Miami. Naturally, people were confused, but when Diddy's team was asked about it, they denied that he had sent any flowers at all, suggesting instead that maybe someone had played a joke in poor taste. Meanwhile, the legal situation surrounding Diddy kept getting more serious. Public interest in the accusations against Sean Combs reportedly intensified even more after the documentary dropped. The series included interviews tied to his federal case, which began in September 2024 when he was arrested and charged with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation for purposes of prostitution. The documentary was released just 2 months after Combs was reportedly sentenced to 50 months in prison following convictions on 2 prostitution-related charges in October 2025. After more than a year in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, reports said he was later transferred to the lower security FCI, Fort Dix, in New Jersey. And by 2026, the legal pressure had still not let up. 50 Cent once again inserted himself into the conversation after new allegations surfaced in court proceedings tied to Combs. According to hearing reports, an escort service owner testified that Combs had allegedly requested more than 30 male escorts, and attorneys in the matter indicated that more state-level criminal charges could still be possible. 50 reacted the way people have come to expect, publicly and bluntly. He posted on Instagram, ref. Against the new allegations, and aimed another jab directly at his longtime rival. But the documentary itself also started bringing legal issues back toward 50 and Netflix. A former sex worker featured in the documentary filed a lawsuit against both 50 Cent and Netflix, accusing them of misrepresentation. According to the complaint, the plaintiff argued that the project deliberately edited and distorted their account in a way that reshaped the story and suppressed key testimony. So even while 50 was celebrating the success and impact of the reckoning, he was also facing legal fallout of his own. Still, none of that appeared to slow him down. And to understand why he went this hard, you have to understand just how deep the tension between 50 Cent and Diddy really goes. These two have been in the same entertainment world for decades, but they have never had a simple relationship. While they did cross paths professionally earlier in their careers, what eventually developed was a long-running feud built on business clashes, public disrespect, conspiracy accusations, trolling, and now documentary warfare. Their history stretches back more than 25 years. In the early days, things were not nearly as hostile. 50 Cent worked with Combs around material connected to the Notorious B.I.G.'s posthumous 1999 album Born Again, and at that point they were still moving in similar circles. But that peace did not last. In 2006, 50 Cent released the diss track The Bomb, where he suggested that Combs knew who was responsible for killing Christopher Wallace. That was an explosive accusation tied to one of the most painful and unresolved stories in hip-hop history. No one has ever been convicted in Biggie's murder, so for 50 to even imply something like that marked a major turning point. From that point on, the relationship changed. There were moments when things seemed calmer on the surface. There was playful banter in interviews. At one point, Diddy and 50 even appeared to be on the same side, while trolling Rick Ross during 50's feud with him. But the tension never truly disappeared. By 2014, 50 was once again publicly taking shots at Diddy, criticizing his music and making it clear that the old issues were still very much alive. And over time, the feud became increasingly personal. 50 has recalled awkward encounters with Diddy at industry events, including one story where he said Diddy made a comment about taking him shopping, something 50 later repeated publicly as an example of how strange and uncomfortable their interactions could get. Diddy, for his part, often tried to dismiss the hostility. During one appearance on The Breakfast Club, he laughed off the idea of real beef and said 50 loved him, suggesting the whole thing was more playful than malicious. But that interpretation became harder to believe once Diddy's legal troubles entered the picture. In 2023, after allegations and lawsuits involving Diddy became public, 50 escalated again. He posted more aggressively, revived old accusations, and started using his production resources to turn the trolling into full media projects. By 2025, this was no longer just Instagram antics. 50 Cent had a production company, a major streaming partner, and a 4-part documentary about one of his oldest rivals. The trolling had become infrastructure, and not everyone was impressed. Some of 50's oldest enemies used the moment to attack him. Ja Rule, one of 50's longest-running rivals, reignited their feud over the Netflix documentary and accused 50 of being no better than the man he was exposing. After Sean Combs, The Reckoning premiered in December 2025, Ja Rule posted criticism online, calling 50 a cancer to the culture and suggesting he had ulterior motives behind the documentary. He also brought up a 2013 incident involving Daphne Joy, the mother of one of 50's children, using it to argue that 50 had no moral high ground. And of course, the history between Ja Rule and 50 Cent is legendary on its own. Their feud goes back over 2 decades and has included robbery allegations, diss tracks, public disrespect, and physical confrontations. One version of the origin story traces it back to Ja Rule being robbed in Queens by someone associated with 50. Another version suggests the tension grew after 50 believed he had been disrespected by Murder Inc. Whatever the exact origin, the beef became one of the most famous feuds in rap history. There were diss songs, fights, and a notorious studio incident in New York where 50 was reportedly stabbed after Murder Incorporated members showed up. So when Ja Rule came after 50 over the Diddy documentary, it was not random. It was just the latest chapter in a war that has never truly ended. And Ja Rule was not the only one who stepped in. Diddy's sons, Justin Combs and Christian King Combs, also entered the picture. They announced that they would appear in a new Zeus Network documentary series set for 2026, a project aimed at showing how their family had been affected by their father's federal trial and conviction. They promoted it with a trailer posted to social media in late December 2025, showing them reacting to footage from outside the courthouse. Christian Combs had already taken public shots at critics of his father earlier. In May 2024, he released a song called Pick a Side, which many interpreted as defending Diddy while also targeting voices like 50 Cent. And 50, unsurprisingly, kept trolling through all of it. Even after doing more formal interviews on major networks, he went right back to posting jokes, edits, and taunts online. At one point, he revived commentary P. Diddy and Jay-Z in relation to an earlier dismissed case, and he even turned the entire moment into commercial branding. One of the clearest examples was a DoorDash campaign titled The Big Beef. The commercial played off 50's reputation for pettiness while pretending he had moved beyond trolling. But the ad's references made it obvious that he was still taking aim at Diddy, especially with nods to the 50-month prison sentence that had become part of the public conversation. That is what makes 50 different in this space. He is not just participating in celebrity beef. He is monetizing it, packaging it, and turning it into entertainment on multiple levels. By this point, between Ja Rule, Diddy's family, and the nonstop public debate, the fallout from the reckoning was already massive. But 50 Cent was apparently not finished. That brings us to the newest and maybe most explosive development yet. On March 5, 2026, 50 posted something to Instagram that instantly lit up the internet. He addressed rumors that he was now working on a documentary tied to the sexual assault allegations involving T.I. and Tamika Tiny Harris. That morning, the rapper and producer shared a screenshot of an article claiming he was developing a documentary tentatively titled Surviving T.I. and Tiny. And the caption was no accident. 50 wrote, "Remember how quiet I got before the Diddy doc?" Then he added another jab implying that T.I. should be worried about questions surrounding numerous sexual assault allegations and might need to call it. The phrase surviving T.I. and Tiny clearly echoed the naming style of Surviving R. Kelly, which made many people view it as a deliberate attempt to trigger alarm before any actual project had even been confirmed. And the feud between 50 and T.I. did not come out of nowhere either. That tension reportedly goes back to 2007, when 50 accused T.I. of being a snitch after his machine gun arrest and plea deal. The conflict flared up again in early 2026 when T.I., while promoting his Kill the King album, accused 50 of ducking a versus battle during an appearance on Shannon Sharpe's Nightcap. 50 responded in typical fashion, using Instagram to troll instead of stepping into a direct music battle. T.I. did not ignore it. Over the following weeks, he reportedly took shots at 50 in several diss tracks, and even members of his family got involved. His sons King Harris and Domani also released music aimed at 50. Then the situation crossed into even uglier territory. King Harris went live and made inflammatory comments about 50 Cent's late mother, Sabrina Jackson, who died when 50 was a child. He later wore a shirt featuring her face, a move that many people felt went way too far. Even T.I. later acknowledged that line had been crossed. In an interview, T.I. said that he was not responsible for every move his family made on their own, though he also admitted he had told King to fall back after the shirt incident. 50's response was not to jump into a traditional rap battle. Instead, he did what he has increasingly done in recent years. He threatened the documentary route. And in some ways, that may be even more damaging, because 50 has shown that he does not always need a diss track to hurt somebody's image. He can build a narrative on screen. The allegations involving T.I. and Tiny are real in the sense that they have existed publicly for years. More than 30 women and one man have accused the couple of drugging, kidnapping, or sexually assaulting them. Allegations T.I. and Tiny have repeatedly and strongly denied. Those accusations first gained major momentum in 2021. In January of that year, Atlanta entrepreneur Sabrina Peterson publicly accused T.I. of once putting a gun to her head. After that, more women began coming forward with similar claims, describing alleged patterns involving invitations to VIP areas or hotel rooms, drinks, and assaults. But in legal terms, the picture is more complicated. Despite the number of accusations and the consistency many observers pointed to, no criminal convictions came from those allegations. Investigations were reportedly opened in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, but no criminal charges were formally filed, in large part because of statute of limitations issues. T.I. and Tiny have consistently maintained their innocence. T.I. publicly said that anything they had ever done was between consenting adults who were into the same things they were into. So once again, 50 appears to be operating in the gap between the courtroom and public opinion. And that gap is powerful, because as of March 2026, there was still no verified production schedule, no confirmed network partner, and no released footage proving that Surviving T.I. and Tiny was actually a real, active documentary project. But that may not even matter. 50 understands how modern media works. Sometimes the threat of exposure does almost as much damage as the finished product itself. He even took shots at T.I. and Tiny through music connected to the Power Origins theme, extending the feud beyond social media and into his entertainment empire. At this point, the pattern is obvious. The reckoning served as proof of concept. 50 showed the entire industry what can happen when he decides to focus on you. He helped produce a high-profile documentary, generated huge public interest, shaped the conversation, and made it clear that old-school beef can now become prestige streaming content. Whether or not a T.I. and Tiny documentary ever fully materializes is almost beside the point. The threat alone has already done the job. It put T.I. on defense. It dominated headlines. And it reminded every rapper with unresolved accusations, hidden history, or skeletons in the closet that 50 Cent is still watching, still moving, and still willing to turn conflict into content. 50 has survived getting shot, adapted through every era of the music business, and built himself into a businessman far beyond rap. But through all of that, one thing has never changed. His sharpest weapon is still his ability to turn beef into spectacle. And based on everything we have seen so far, this does not look like the end of the story. It looks like the beginning of the next one. Because if 50 Cent has proven anything over the years, it is that he does not let things go. He does not ease up. And he definitely does not forget. So now the only question is,